Hi everybody, it's Jolene and I'm back with a series. I haven't done a YouTube series for a long time, and this series is called Scrumping. Now, scrumping is something that I used to do when I was a kid, and it basically means it's more to do with fruit actually, going and picking and plucking the ripe fruit off of trees and things that maybe you're not supposed to. I suppose blackberry picking is the easiest version of scrumping, but when I was a kid, there were the odd apple trees that were overhanging, let's say, into the pathway that you could go and steal some of the apples or scrump some of the apples if you could. Well, I've transformed scrumping into my method of doing junk journaling, or at least my mashup of junk journaling and creative journaling, because my favourite thing to do is to scrump at charity shops or op shops, as you Americans call them, or to scrump in other people's rubbish, or to scrump at car boot sales and yard sales and find beautiful things that I can use for my junk journal. And so I thought I would put together a series that was called Scrumping. It's going to be about junk journaling and art journaling. We're going to make a journal from scratch. In fact, we're going to make a few. We're going to make a journal from scratch, and it's going to be beautifully, wonderfully bonkers. And it all started because of this book, which everything's just fallen out of. I'm going to turn the camera around and show you. So I happened to be in my most favourite charity shop the other day, and I saw this book on the shelf. It's a great big hardback book all about William Morris. And I specifically chose it for two reasons. One, I love William Morris and I love the designs that he creates. But secondly, because all of the imagery that was in this book was on matte pages. Now, if you've been following me for a while, either on this channel or in my Facebook community group, you'll know that I love a matte picture. I love matte because it doesn't shine when I put it in my book. It doesn't detract from the rest of my book. I love a matte picture. Now you can already see I've been scrumping already through this book because there are some wonderful pictures in here. Now, I know it's a shame to cut up a book. However, hold in mind this cost me 50p, so it's a charity shop book. And it's just full of the most beautiful prints from William Morris, and little bits and pieces. And I have been through this book and cut out all of the bits and pieces that I'm going to need. And these are going to be the backbone for a series of journals, which I will eventually pop into my Etsy page. But I thought rather than just making them and doing it like that, I would show you how I do it. And we're going to play in them as well and create little pockets and tucks and maybe a bit of artwork in it. But let's see what we're going to do. So this is going to be the main fodder for my book. And then I thought, now what can I have to accompany this book? Because the main thing is I'm going to need some pages. So I have spent a wonderful weekend tie-dyeing or tea-dyeing, tea-dyeing, onion dyeing, coffee dyeing, a load of different papers. I have got so many papers here, I could make journals forever. And these papers have come up really beautifully. So there's so many videos out there on onion dyeing and tea dyeing that I think we all know how to do it. But if you don't, go ahead, just put into YouTube tea dyeing paper and you'll find it. I have a huge bag of onion skins. We cook with onions quite a lot in my house, so whenever we're cooking the onions, I sort them out. And I'd never before just separated my onion skins out and dyed with pure skins. Normally, I have a whole bag full of yellow and red onion skins, and there I go. And I didn't really believe that they would be so different. However, they truly are. This little pile here of lovely yellows, look at those. They were all dyed using yellow onion skins, and I've got ledger sheet papers here. I've got some old notebooks and graph papers and all sorts of different things. And when I tea dye or onion dye, I dip the paper in onions. I leave them for a good 2 hours to really soak up all of that colour, and then I pop them in the oven for literally a couple of minutes, just so that that colour really kind of sets in. And obviously, whatever different paper you put in soaks up the dye differently, and whatever tray you put them in will also make it be slightly different. So I've got some lovely yellows. Red onion leaves, would you believe, dye everything green. Now this is a much more vivid green than it looks on the screen. I wonder if I can make this slightly more realistic. Let's see. There we go. There we go. So I've got some really lovely greens, especially these ledger papers have come up a really rich kind of moss green, which is just beautiful. And then I've got a pile here. These are tea skins. So this is red tea, so fruit tea that has also been dyed, and we get these lovely blues. Now, if you're wondering how I get these different patterns, it's just all dependent on which trays you use. This is a pizza tray, so it's got little holes in it. And again, I've got all sorts of different bits of paper to use there. Now, I've also got loads of different paints and distress oxides and all of the kind of basics that we have, some cardboard bits and pieces. But I thought it would be really fun is if every week when I go scrumping, I collect something that can be used to create our book. But the first thing we need to do is make the signatures of our book. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the signatures purely by folding pages. I'm going to have all sorts of different sizes of pages using this paper. I won't be binding it at all yet. That won't happen until I have created all of the pockets and everything else, because I want to have the freedom of adding bits and pieces into my pages without having to take them out of the book. So I'm going to create all of my signatures first. I'm going to create them in batches of 4 so that I've got 4 journals at the end, 1 for me and 3 for you, should you want one. So I'm going to create all of that. I'm going to be on here every week, once a week, on a Tuesday with a scrumping video for you. And I hope you'll join me in the process. And of course, if you want to join along, this book, I'm sure, is readily available on Amazon secondhand or eBay secondhand. I'm betting you can buy it. And if you don't mind cutting up books, then you can have a go with me. So, week 1, let's see what we do. are left with these bits. You will have seen me folding up all of my signatures. So these little parcels of paper will end up being my signatures, and you will have noticed that on some of the pages I tore the edges. Now that's because for me, when I'm making a junk journal, I want the interest in the journal to not only be from the front but also from the side. And when I put these signatures together and I've got all these different textures of edges, it's just going to look divine. But it means that I'm left over with all of these little pieces, and because this is a scrumping journal, what I want to try and do is maximize how much I use of anything that I use. So I want to use all of it. And also you probably saw that when I deconstructed this book and I pulled out some of the pages, that I do have some bits and pieces of imagery that I have decided are possibly not the best to use as a great big piece, but maybe there might be little bits and pieces in it, like here, that could be useful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some really simple rag ribbon out of this and this. And I'm going to use my circle punch, and you're going to see why when I come to do it. I'm going to make some rag ribbon out of that, and then I'm going to put it through my sewing machine and add some stitch and add some thread, and this will make the most divine edging strips that I can put down the side of some of my pages that are perhaps a bit more flatter. Again, we're always about adding interest and building it up. I'm also going to use from my stock some of this. So those of you who are junk journalers, maybe you have on hand some beautiful papers that you like to use. My choice of lovely paper is Locta paper. I do sell packs of Locta paper which come like this on my Etsy page, which are beautiful little moments. So I wanted to add, this is all beautiful and I want to keep the themes of these kind of colours going through, but I also want to add a hint of pop. And in amongst this little pack of Locta paper here, I've got this really bright, shocking pink paper. Here it is, which is plain. But when I add it to everything else, I think it's just going to give a little bit of pizzazz to what I'm making, and I just want to bulk that up. So there are obviously throughout this project, there are going to be moments where I'm going to use stuff from my stock. If you're following at home and you don't have any Locta paper and you want to buy some, then of course you can do. Or just use a piece of paper and paint it pink, or you could use sugar paper or just some old scrapbook paper. Anything that is thin enough and pliable. You don't want really thick card, so if you're going to use scrapbook stock, use scrapbooking paper, not scrapbooking card. Anything that's nice and thin. And I'm going to begin by cutting myself some strips of this, and then you're going to see me having a lot of fun with these, with this, and with a whole load of glue. My choice is to use Tombow glue sticks. They're really good craft glues, but obviously you could use whatever you want. And then the final touches is I will be sewing it. So let's have some gluey fun. So I have just put a huge amount of stitch through this really long ribbon of all of our scraps, and this really is the ultimate of scrumping because you know, we've really just used everything in here that's waste. If you haven't got a sewing machine and you still wanted to do this, of course you can just stick things all over it, but adding that stitch just really kind of makes this a much more flexible product. I can kind of do all sorts with it now. So I have got my little stacks of paper here like this, and you will have noticed that on the larger ledger papers I created this tuck over, and on here I'm going to be sticking in the next video, I'm going to be using some little tabs just to make that fold over nicely, and we're going to sew those on. But I also have these slightly smaller ledger papers in each pack. Let's see if we can find them here. Like, no, I'll find them in a minute. these pieces that are just folded in half. And what I want to do is in each set, and remember we're making 4 books, in each set I'm going to stick a little piece of this ribbon, and that way when we look at the side of our book there's this really flush bit of colour that's just going to be beautiful. So the first thing I need to do is obviously divide this into 4, and then I'm going to decide using that 4 how big a bit of side I put on or how small. I'm going to stick it down with glue first, and then I will secure it in with just a little bit of stitch just to make sure it's really firmed in there, and I love a bit of stitch anyway. And then we'll be finished for today, and then I will come back and do a little bit more work in these next week, and I really hope that you will join along with this amazing Scrumping journal based on William Morris and gardens. I'll see you soon.